Hi there, welcome to the third video looking at using X's and O's and Stream Deck to interface with the black square King Air. And this one we'll be looking at the lower left panel in the cockpit, which is this one here sort of down at the bottom, which is about the electrical circuits and engine starts and that kind of stuff. So as ever, when we're doing any development work with X's and O's, we really should read the LVARs from the SIN, collect the LVARs. The local variables, you can create them yourselves, they're created by the developers, but they don't kind of become visible to the scripting part of this, sort of available to you until you activate them. So it means you've got to go around and click on all the switches or something like that, or get it to read through the actual XML files that define the aircraft, and it will find them all for you. So you don't need to do that when you're using it just to fly, just using it. You do need, well, yeah, I suggest you do need it when you're scripting, so that when you look for events and variables, they've all been sort of presented to you. So it's worth doing that every time. What I'm going to do is work my way left to right across here. So we'll start looking at the external power switch. So what I would do is hunt for the behaviors, and you need to change the file you're looking at. By default, it's looking at the default file, and it's the analog version that we're looking for here. That's what this company have called it. So if we click in here and start to look for the analog King Air XML file, that loads automatically. Other companies call it the cockpit or the interior or something like that. Anyway, the component we're looking for is the external power switch. So we just type enough in the filter to bring that up here. Look at the external power switch, and it's giving us a clue of the kind of variables we've got available to us to make this work. The sort of thing I'm looking at is the variables that are being used here. This gives me a clue that we generally can't write to the A variable. The older A variables were read-only, so there has to be another way of writing to that variable, and usually the companies have created them. It could be using the B variable, it could be using the L local variable, but that usually gives me a clue that there's going to be probably an input event created now, which is kind of where things have moved towards. So I would have a look at my script editor and look up sim events, and again I'm looking for the external and filter here and look at the input events, and yep, there's one there, an input event for the external power. It also tells me under here that I can just set it directly with a B variable. So what I did initially was I allocated that a script to this toggle button here, and it's a really simple script. In fact, if I bring it up on my PowerPoint now, using that input event, read its current value, invert it so if it's 0 it becomes 1, and write it back into the same variable. And if it's 1, put a 0. So that is the script that works that. So it calls the script, uses a K event to call that script that you've written, and we need to read a variable so that we can control the indicator light. So we read that variable there and tell it if it's 1, turn that on. So if I press the button on that there on my Stream Deck, you can see the indicator light comes on, and I've got external power and it's off. So it's as simple as that. In fact, that indicator works even if I turn that on manually by clicking on it here. That indicator light will work. But I changed my mind about whether I would use that because I had a spare switch on my yoke. I'm not using the alternator switch on my yoke for anything else, so I have allocated that on directly using the B variable. So somewhere down here I should have external power. There it is, external power on, and that's allocated to button number 12 on the flight controls, and I'm writing directly to the B variable and sending the value 1. To change these values, you just roll with your mouse and set the value. So you want 1 for on, and the external power off is exactly the same, but with a 0 here, so that we're going to send a 0 to it. And again, if I move that across, the indicator will spot when I turn it on and when I turn it off. So I've got an indicator light. The next one I'm going to look at is the leave that on there for a second too, if you need to see that, but there it is. This battery bus disconnect, what this is about is isolating the battery if the battery has a fault, so that it's not connected to any of the buses anymore. And we're going to do it just by writing to an L var, this L variable, and that just does a disconnect there. So on my, it's only on the Stream Deck. I haven't got a button for this one. It really is just an on-off event, writing directly to there, writing a 1 to turn that on, and a 0 to turn it off, and to read the variable so I can change the look of this, the background basically, so I can see whether it's been activated or not. I'm reading the same variable, so it's a very simple use of the Stream Deck there. And again, if I bring the simulator up on this, and click on the Stream Deck, that keep an eye on that button there. See the button that changes, so I know I've activated it, and that has disconnected the battery for safety, and I can reconnect it with another press. So that's a pretty simple one. It's about to get a little bit more complicated because we need to look at the avionics power. The old avionics master switch on doesn't work effectively. We have to do a fair bit of scripting. It's because that's what Black Square do. They try to make the background buses, the electrical buses and fuses and everything work much more realistically. So we get that information as ever from here, from the behavior. And if we look at the avionics here, our avionics power switch, it tells me all the different circuits that need to be connected or disconnected at various times. And really it's basically got two scripts. One, if it was off, we're going to turn it on, and the opposite to turn it off. And the difference between the two scripts is whether it's got that inverter, the logical NOT operation. So there are the two scripts. So what it's going to do, rather than explain it all to you, if you want this, you can copy it. So this is what the script is going to be, that's going to get called, that it's going to change the switch position itself from off to on. It's going to check whether the master breaker, which is one of the connections here, is on, and if it is, turn it off, and if it's off, turn it on. It's basically how this works. Let's have a look at where it is here in the avionics section. It's an on-off switch. It's the same script being called twice. I've called it once with the 0, once with the 1, once with the 0, but it's really just running a toggle switch, and it's reading this variable here the avionics master switch, and it works. But what I prefer to do is obviously put it onto a switch that's actually on the yoke. So I've got an avionics off and an avionics on, and it's calling, one's calling the off script and one's calling the on script, and the scripts look like this. If I bring that to the front, go away. On the yoke, it's basically their other script cut into two parts. So there's the on script, and it's just writing directly the numbers I need straight into the toggle, and here's the off switch, again just toggling it, and it's just checking here when you go to turn it on, does it need to be turned on and does it need to be turned off, and that's it. Like, is toggling the avionics power on and off. Again, I'll leave that there for a second if you need to pause it and have a look at that. The battery master switch. That's this one here. A two-position switch, and it lifts the, well, any of these switches will lift the gang bar up and down. Oops, wrong one. Let's put that back. It's this filter here. The battery master switch. Looks like there's a lot going on here, but in fact what we need to do really is just to toggle the battery master switch here with this value here, the LVAR, and the rest of it kind of just follows. I haven't got it on my stream deck, I've got it straight onto my yoke, just using the battery there, the battery switch on the yoke. So there's my battery off, and it really is just writing straight to the LVAR. Off is 0, and if it's the on version, it will just have a 1 there. So that's really all I'm doing. So you can see here, that's it, that's the on-off switch, and it just works. It does runs all the other parts of the script itself. So switching that on pushes the gang bar up, power comes on, and that seems to be matching exactly what happens if I do it manually. Okay, we'll carry on working our way along here. The generators, a bit more complex, the generators switches. These are 3-position switches, so that's in the off position at the moment, it's down. The next position up is midway, that's on. But switching it from off to on doesn't actually engage it, doesn't make it work. We have to reset the generators. We've got one more move to make up, and this is a kind of spring-loaded one. So if I hold it up, it stays up, but as soon as I let go, it drops down again. So it just triggers the reset. So the actual scripting behind it is a bit more complex. If we look at the generator, and I want the generator switch left, and it's got 3 states, whether it's turning on various different parts of it, or setting the reset. So what I've decided to do is to allocate that to on the stream deck. I've got one script which makes it move up, because mostly you're going to want to turn it from off to on and press the reset, so it's going to be a movement upwards. And I've got that on a normal press, and on the long press I've got a generator down switch, so that will turn it off. If you think about it, it's only if it's on, the only movement it can do is off. There's nowhere else for it to go other than down. Going up, it could be going from off to on or from on to reset, so the up script is a little bit more complicated, and it looks like this. So the switch up, firstly it's checking that it is where it is. If it's in the off position, then it's got, if it's in the off position, it's got a fair bit of work to do to switch on various parts and then move the switch into the on position. If it's in the on position, then it's going to toggle the alternator, make it come on, and do the reset, and then it's going to put it back into the 0 position. So you flick it up and flick it back down again, all in one move. So that's the script that's going to go on into and be called for the normal press. For the long press, the generator down is much simpler. That it can only be in the center position, so it hasn't got to make any decision. It's just going to check that the alternator's on. If it is, turn it off, and then make sure the reset is switched off and put it into position 2. So that's all that happens on the down press. So that's all on that button there. Make sure you turn the repeat off. That's really important here. We don't want to go careering straight up or straight down, and I'll show you that sort of in operation if I put it into the flight simulator. If I just press the left generator button, let's bring it back down manually. Press the left generator button with a short press once, it's gone up, and again it goes up and down. If I do a long press, it goes off. So you can't, it's harder to turn it off by accident. That's the kind of key to it. You've got to be a long press to make sure you do mean it. And the right generator is pretty much the same. It's just going to be checking the R version of an alternator 2. So again, it checks if it's in the off position, do all that stuff there, and then move it to the on position. If it's on, put it up to the reset position and drop it back to the on position. And the off is, again, check alternator 2, and if I need to, turn it off, make sure the reset's turned off, and then move the switch into position 2. So that's again on the long press for that one. I hope that makes sense, but that seems to be a good way of dealing with a 3-position switch that I really don't want to accidentally go into the off position. So I've got to do a long press to force it into the off position. Okay, inverter. About the pause, I've dropped my mouse on the floor. There we go. It's really about connecting the buses together. Let's have a look at it in the cockpit and see what's going on. Again, it's a 3-way switch, and this is about inverting current. So I think it's DC becoming AC, if I remember rightly. Yes, I think it is. Normally, of course, we want to do on and off. And same on this side here, but if needed, if something goes wrong, we can transfer between different buses. So again, the same solution as before is to use short presses for the normal sort of on-off toggle, so the things you're going to want to do mostly, and then if you're in an emergency situation, we can toggle it down with a long press. So the script behind that for the normal on-off toggle is just to toggle that circuit and to toggle that circuit, and that moves the switch as well, but by doing it. Okay, and so that's the inverter on off. That's the bus transfer. So you can see that we're running it into different buses here, same circuit into different buses. And on the right inverter, there's the on-off script. So that's the short press, making it go up and down. And then if you want to go down to the bottom to transfer to a different bus, that's on the long press. Next switch across is the bus sense. Let's bring that up. The bus sense is really an automatic sense. It senses if something's gone wrong with the buses, and if you fix that, you can then reset it. So you've got an up and down reset. Again, this is a spring-loaded switch, so it only goes up and down, and or you can put it into test mode. Again, spring-loaded. As soon as I let go, it comes back again. I haven't really got to grips with this one. I'm having a bit of problem. I can't find a way of animating the switch. I can make it do what's behind the scenes, but I can't find out how to animate the switch. If anybody can, I'd really like to know. It's on my Stream Deck. So it's a toggle switch. And really all I'm doing is toggling the sensor, and it doesn't seem to matter which way I go with it. It tests it and resets it. So I've got that toggle script there, and it just basically does a simulated bus fault detect on and then off again. So haven't really explored it too well, I'm afraid. Still got some work to do on that one, but it seems to work. Okay, I can reset it anyway if there is a fault. I've got a similar problem with the next one across as well. The bus ties. I know exactly what they do. That in this again is a 3-position switch, so I can close them, make sure that it's not open, it's closed. I can have it in normal position, or I can manually open, again making sure they're not closed. So what I've done to make it work is I've actually used 3 buttons: one to call that script, one to call that script, and one to call that one. So I can manually open and close them. It just doesn't affect, if I bring it up, if I press on that button there, it's doing the right thing, but nothing happens in terms of animation. But I know I pressed the right thing. I can see it all working on the meters. So that's as far as I've got with that one there. The starter and ignition. Again, it's another 3-position switch. And generally you're going to want to go from off to on and back again. So that's what you'd normally want to do. That turns the ignition and the engine starter on. Going this way here just runs the starter motor, and it won't light because there's no ignition. So on the Stream Deck, for the starter, it's an event with a key down event calling this starter toggle script, which I'll show you in a minute. And over here, long press to toggle it down to the starter only and back again. So you can do a short press to just to start and then remove the starter, and a long press, which you're not going to use very often, is the down version. And the script for the starter, it looks like this. It's a little bit confusing because I'm using my own variable to write. We have got to write something into here. So I'm using my own variable, and because it's my variable, it starts off at 0, and then it's going to want to change it to 1 to be on. I said it a number of times, but the problem with this scripting language is it reads the value of the variables right at the start and doesn't read them again until it's finished the entire script. So this will start at 0, and even though we've changed it to 1, this will still be 0. So it will write, if we don't do anything about it, it will write a 0 into the switch and a 0 into the starter. And we want it to write a 1, so we have to invert it here. So it's kind of, it's unusual. It's not what would happen in a programming language. A programming language, when we change this from 0 to 1, it would read it again and it would automatically write a 1 into here. So we have to use that. When I looked in the behavior section, it also did toggle the alternator as well at the same time, but I don't seem to need to do that. But I put a marker here to remind myself to check it, but it seems to work without doing any work on the alternator, so I'm leaving it as it is at the moment. So that's the left-handed going to toggle between the starter and the ignition. And if you want to just take it down to the starter, that's the long press. That's what we do here. Yeah, so we just put it down and works like that. So that's the right, there's the left, and that's the right. So yeah, so that's the starter and ignition. That's why I was hesitating, because I could see the starter in here. Yeah, that's the right hand button. Starter only. We just affect the starter. That's all we do. So again, I'm using my own variables here, just affecting the starter on and off for both of the left and the right engine. That's all we're doing. So that seems to work quite well. Auto ignition. It's really quite simple. We're going to write directly to the LVAR, to the L variable left automatic auto ignition switch, and we're going to write a 1 for on and a 0 for off, and same with the right. And it's going to look like this. Here's my auto ignition left. We literally are writing straight in to the LVAR. It's an on-off event. There's the variable, value of 1 for on, value of 0 for off, and we're going to read that value, I believe. No, there's not even, don't even need to read it. You just put it straight in there. Again, I'm going to use 2 different color backgrounds so I know whether it's on or off. So that's the auto ignition for the left and then for the right. So that's all very quick and easy to do. The next button to cross so we've done the auto ignitions. The next buttons across here are they're called the engine anti-ice, but they're actually internal inertial separators. And you kind of get the clue again if you look in the behavior tool that if you search for anti-ice here or ice, you don't really pick anything here. You pick the windscreen anti-ice, but hunting through, if we look for the inertial separator switch, that's the anti-ice switch. And it's an unusual one. It's using this XMLR variable, but it is a local variable. So sometimes we can write to it and sometimes we can't. This time we can. So if we look at the Stream Deck for this one here, I've written it as a toggle, and reading the variable there so that I can change the background. So if we look at that script for the anti-ice, the left one is literally read it and invert it and write it back in again. Same for the right. So that works. That's the script that I'm using. And it definitely works, and it moves the switch as well quite happily. So if we go back into the cockpit and let's bring the stream deck up. If I click on the left one here, you'll see the switch moving. Same with the right, and it works. And then beneath that you've got the actuators, and they're usually in the main position, and you can flick them to the standby. And so I've got a script for that, for the actuators, one for the left and one for the right. Again, it's a toggle. And this one, I'm reading the left variable. Did I read it there? Yes, I did. Have to read it there, and do the same here for the actuator version of it. And that looks like this. There's the variable, and it gets the usual read, invert, write, and that just works. The actuators are pretty easy to do. Auto feather. Auto feather is another one of these dreaded 3-position switches. Not spring loaded, so we have to sort of know whether we're going up or down with it. Let's bring that in and have a look at how we're doing that. So I've got a script called auto feather and one called auto feather test, and it reads the variable there, the panel auto feather switch 1. So on the short press, it toggles that into the auto feather arm and changes the position of the switch. Well, it uses the position of the switch to decide whether to turn on or off that circuit there. And the long press for the test mode is toggling that variable and again deciding whether to switch on or off the circuit. So that's the toggle switch for the going up and the toggle switch for going down, and it's working. And the next one is the governor test switch. Let's get into the cockpit. So we're going to test the governor in 2 different ways, testing the prop. So firstly, testing the governor. Now this switch here is spring loaded. It only works when you keep your finger on it, and then if you take your finger away, it goes away. So to do that, what I've done for the governor prop test, I'll show you the actual script for it in a minute, but I've used a key down event and then a key up event calling the same script. So it's basically a toggle switch, but I'm using the key down. So if I hold the key down, then it does that, and as soon as I let go of the key, it toggles it again and reverses it. So the actual script is just that toggle switch, that toggle action. As I hold, if it's off, as I hold my finger down, it turns it on, and as soon as I let go, it reverses it again. So a key up, key down event. I've not really used one of those before. And I'm using the same technique for the ground idle test, because again, that's a spring loaded tester. So I've got a key down event to turn the test on, and then when I release the key up runs the same script again so that it reverses its action. And that is here. So if I show you them working, if I hold it down, the governor test, and let go, if I hold the button down, let go, it's off. So that's how that works. Now really the last thing is not on this panel here, but it's quite closely associated. It's the prop sync over here. I've got it on my Stream Deck here, the prop sync, so it's calling a script to toggle that. But I've also discovered that I've got one spare switch left on my Honeycomb yoke, so I've also put it on there. So the script here, that's the script being called, so it's going to read that, and then it's going to, if the prop sync is active, write it into this circuit here. But of course, when it reads it, if it was off and we're turning it on, it wouldn't know it's been turned on because it hasn't updated the variable, so it will think it's off. So we have to invert it and then write the value in. So it'll take the 0, write it and put it in. So that's the script on the toggle for the button. On the yoke, I've got a script for the on, which is very, very similar. But it's going to just basically check if the prop is active, and if it's not, if it's a 0, then we've got to do that work. We'll turn that on and we'll turn that on. And for the off, we'll check that it's actually on before we switch it off. So we'll check that is it definitely on, and if it is, we'll toggle it here and switch the circuit off. So that's what I've got on my switch on my yoke, and I can show you that working. If you keep your eye on the switch over here, there's the prop sync working on my switch, and ditto, here it is working. If I press the button here for the prop sync, it's working there just as well. Okay, so that's really it. That's everything that's on this panel here, plus the bonus of that one there. So I hope that's been useful. I hope it's made sense, and I'll see you in the next video.